Hi guys. So I wanted to take you through a shorter video of how to organize and think about your array class, right? So we're creating an object-oriented based Java solution for with a graphical user interface to connect to a Microsoft Access database as well as to manipulate the data in the database. So this is the screen that we are going to currently work on. The way that you think about your array class is that you have want to populate your data that is present in your database table into an array of objects. And for that, obviously, firstly you need to have the base class. So I have a base class register. I also have another base class called student. So depending on which table you are going to load, you will create a base class accordingly. And then you can create your array class based on the array of objects to manipulate the array of objects of that particular base class. So onto your projects, first thing you will add is obviously a Java class called whatever array. In that array, you will create an array of objects for your database table. So if I want to look at my students list that is present in TBL students in the database, I will create an array of student objects. I will also want to look at how many student objects are actually read from this table. So I'll create an integer size variable. You will want an object of the connector class that you created for the you can access connector. I create an object of that connector class and I call it db connector. Then you have a constructor of this class. So the constructor of this class obviously has the same name as the class, right? Then you have in the constructor, you're going to read in the data from the database table, and the field names are going to be populated into respective variables. So I've created variables of appropriate data types as per the table design. Now you are going to run the query to select everything from the student table. Firstly, ensure that this query runs on Access. Make sure you type this query out in Access, run it, make sure there are no mistakes or it produces the result that you want. Then what you do is you use the DB connector object, and because this is a select query, you will use the run select query method that we created in this class. You can see the run select query method. It needs a string parameter. It executes the query for you, and the result set that is obtained, which is the result of the select query, is returned to you as a result set object. So in your array class, when you call this method, the result that is returned must be received in a result set object. I'm calling it rs. Then you loop through the result set, which is basically record row by row of the okay, sorry, row by row of the result that you are going to get. So you're going to basically get this as the result set. You're going to loop through one row at a time, which is what rs.next does. And within that row, you will see we have different columns. You will see there's student ID, student name, student surname. So within this row, each of these columns needs to be read into the variables we created just now, and you read that in. Make sure that you read the variable names by its proper column headings. So for that, the best thing to do is to use the column headings in the design view and paste it over here so there is no error while you try to map things. Once you have received all the parameters that are required to create a student object, you create the student object using the student classes parameterized constructor. You put that object into the array of students at position size s, which is originally 0. And once you've loaded the first student, you can increment size. So as this loop carries on, each student will be loaded one at a time into the array of students. So array of students will then look like a copy of your database basically. So that is the first thing that you will do in your constructor, I mean in your array class, which is the constructor method. Then you need to now add a bunch of methods. But how do you decide what methods to add? For that, you will go to the design of your screen and you think about what actions can the user do and what is it that the user wants to perform on the screen. So firstly, we want to view all the information that is present in the database. So for that, the user will click on the view all button, and when they click on the view all button, you want to display that information over here. So for that, you can create a method called get all. This method can return a string. The method can return a string, so you will create your string variable with a heading if you want of what it should be. Then whether you want to read again from the database doing this using the same method we did for constructor is up to you, but I'm doing that same method. I'm actually creating a string SQL, which is select star from the table I want to select. I use the DB connector object to run the select query. The result set is populated into the RS object. I loop through my RS object. I read in each of the column headings are the values that are present in the cell. Using those values, I create a new student object and then I put it in the object called S. Then once you've done that, you want to append this object's toString method into the result string that you are going to return. Ignore this part and this part because you only working with one table. I work with two tables and that's why this part is here. Please ignore, you will only be doing this and appending a slash n. The catch statement needs to be there because we need a try catch block around it, and return the string result. The result string will be returned to whichever method calls the get all method, and it will obtain the list of students. Now you go back and think about the second task the user can do. The user can now do view today's absentee list, right? So to do that, we are going to write another query, which is to create the absentee, who are the students who are absent today in this date. So for that, I written my select query, select everything from this table where the registration date is today's date and they were not present basically. Same concept, nothing new. You run the select query, get the result set object, loop through the result set, get the variables in, create the student, put it in a object called S, and append the object into the result string that you created here with a title called today's absentee list, append a slash n at the end, and then return the result. So I hope the pattern is getting clear to you. The only thing that's different here is the query that you are going to run. Next task or next function that I have on my screen is to search by date. And when they search by date, they will enter the date they want to search by in this control and click on this view button. And we want to perform a query that will take this date and run the query for this date to select the absentee list for this particular date. So let's write the method. So obviously in the method, you need to have sent what is the date that you're searching for as a parameter. The method will return a string for you. We are creating a heading called absentee list for this date, which is the date that was sent in as a parameter. We create the query, which is select everything from the table where the date is this particular date and the present, they were not present basically. Result set is obtained, loop through the result set, get the variables, create the object, toString the object, append slash n, and keep appending it to the result. So whoever were absent for that date will be present in this result string. And then we return the string. So as this is kind of the pattern is getting clearer to you, I hope. If search by name is pressed, we are going to enter the surname of the person over here and view. So you can basically replicate, copy paste the same method, but instead of passing the date as a parameter, we're going to be passing the surname as a parameter. And the way you construct the query will also be a little bit different because instead of having registration date is equal to that date, we are going to say the surname must be equal to the surname. Don't forget, the surname is enclosed in single quotes, so we will need those single quotes when the query is finally built. So be careful when you construct your query, SQL query over here, loop through the result set, create your return string and send it back. The next method that we want in our array class is for the register screen. So remember, the register screen was for us to allow you to add um, a new registration detail record into the TBL registration. So for that, the user will be entering all the information they want for the TBL registration. So if you look at TBL registration, these are the things that are present in TBL registration. We want to know which student, what date, where they present, did they give a note, what is the details present in the note. So all this will be captured in the screen. When the user clicks on the add button, the information from the screen must be now sent or added into the database as a record. So for that, we will create a method in our array class called add registration details or something. All the items that are present in our screen will appear as parameters here. Using these items, we will construct our SQL query. So again, when we construct this, it will be ideal if you first type this in Access, because you know the registration date is a date field, so it needs to be enclosed in hash symbols. Boolean values can be added as they are, and text values needs to be enclosed in single quotes, and all the values must be comma separated. So construct this query very carefully, and then you will use the run insert update delete query in the db connector class to execute this query. And as this method does not return a boolean value, you don't have to receive anything back. And but the method, if this call executes properly, we want to say that this one was executed successfully. So we created a success variable and set it to true. If there was an exception, we set it to false, and we return that variable back to whoever is calling. So hope the array class is clear for you to proceed.